Board. Welcome to the regular board meeting for the Fargo Board of Education. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda? Jim?
I move adoption of the agenda as provided.
Is there a second?
Second?
There's a motion for approval of the agenda with a second. All in favor signify by saying yes. Jennifer?
May I, sorry, before we take a vote, may I request for this to be, for one of the consent agenda items to be pulled down into business for
Yes,
discussion?
if you would like to indicate which one that is, that would be fine.
Letter E, EL 14.
Okay, so there is a request to move EL 14 to business, so that would be, item B under business. Any opposition to that? If not, all in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Opposed? Motion passes. We have a performance tonight. We have some students here from Davies, the Davies Saxophone Trio. Welcome to the meeting this evening, and thanks for kicking us off. At our last board meeting, we were blessed with having a live performance, and so we are so happy to be able to have that again tonight. Ainsley, would you like to kick this off for us and introduce them? Thank you.
Absolutely. So tonight we have a saxophone trio. We have Marcus Hart, a junior, Carissa Anderson, and Ben Deers, who are both seniors, and they are from Davies. They'll be playing The King's Pipes by Donald Matthews, and you will definitely notice their band PPE. Their special masks for their instrument to go in, and then their bells are masked as well with bell covers. So here they are.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. I bet we have some comments that we would like to make. Board members, anyone? Come on now, I said that we'd have some comments, so please. Yeah. David.
I talked to one of your mothers out in the front way just before this, and I don't think we understand what an impact this last year has had. She was so excited because this is the first time she has seen her son perform live in a year. And that's really saying something. You guys are absolutely great.
Thank you.
Well, and we're awfully glad that you chose to make that first performance a board meeting, even though it might not have been really your choice. Any other board members have comments? Nikki?
There we go. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Such a joy to have live music and to see you guys play. How long have you been playing?
I've been playing saxophone for about almost 7 years.
Wow. Okay.
7 as well for me.
Probably 6.
So this is what you get when you play 6, 7 years. Okay. Did you play other instruments before, or do you play other instruments as well?
I also play piano, and I've done that for like 10, 11 years.
Nice.
I play piano as well, and I say it's about 10 years as well.
I also played piano, but I started that at around 7th grade.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome.
And then there's a few others
Yeah, great.
that I've kind of picked up mainly for like jazz band and stuff, like flute and clarinet,
Yeah.
trumpet. Oh, that one was really for jazz band. But,
Super.
Yeah.
Well, with that, then I'm curious. I didn't want this to be the first question, so I'm glad David spoke up. But do you continue to remain, do you wish to remain involved after you're done with high school? Has music had that kind of impact on you that you want to remain involved in some capacity?
For me, yes. I hope to, well, no, I'm going to continue playing music and performing in my future, as I will be going into music later on in my life. So,
Wonderful.
I'm not planning on studying music in the future. I'm planning on going into law, but I know that I'll keep playing, so it still is going to be a part of me, so that's important to me.
Wonderful.
I'm also kind of currently planning at the moment to at least apply for different colleges in music, mainly music composition or jazz. But I would really like to continue if that's possible.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I like to see the lasting impact because it's so critical that we have these opportunities and they do last a lifetime. So thank you. That's
you.
great, you guys. Great job.
Robin?
I couldn't help myself. There's a college recruiter in the room. But there are a lot of minors in music as well, and there are many dual majors in different campuses here locally. So I think your playing was lovely, and I think it was very good. Do you all take lessons outside of school, like private lessons as well?
I have, with saxophone, and especially with piano.
Okay.
I don't take private saxophone lessons, but I do take piano lessons outside of school.
Okay.
I started taking a few private lessons from Dr. Sandberg at UND earlier this year because I performed for a scholarship with him.
Sure.
But other than that, I haven't taken lessons.
So the majority of what we're hearing is learned in Fargo Public Schools.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very, very much, and we can wear our masks if both you can wear them on your faces and your instruments. So we really appreciate you being here, and all the best to you, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, item 4, is the recognition of audience, and a couple of individuals have signed up to speak with us, share thoughts with us this evening. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and address for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 4 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker will be asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of your time at the podium. And our first speaker this evening is Greg Hams. I hope I have the last name correct. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Thank you and welcome.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Greg Hammes. My address is 2891 Lilac Lane North in North Fargo. And first of all, thanks for having me. I've never been in front of the Board of Education. I do have to take a moment and thank you guys for everything you do. As looking at the agenda, looks like you guys deal with some heavy items, and money issues, as I've learned over the years, are never easy to deal with. With that said, I'm here to voice my support for the Fargo North Track and Field project as set forth in the long-range facility planning with the timeline completion for fall of 2022. I'm the father of 3 daughters. One was in track, 2 are currently in track, and this is something that we've talked about at Fargo North as a need for a long time, and we really hope this becomes a reality in the future. If I may, I'd like to talk about a few reasons why this really needs to be done. Found out recently, Fargo North cannot practice at North Dakota State University as we've done in the past. It's my understanding we have 150 track athletes that we got to find a way to bus to different schools to get on the track. This might be, a short-term Band-Aid, but, obviously is a long-term solution. This just isn't realistic. Fargo North, if we had a track, this would put us on the same level field as other schools, would allow us to practice daily on site, would allow us to be more productive and save on transportation time and expense if we were required to bus to other schools. This would allow us to do something that's never happened at Fargo North. We've never hosted a home track meet, whether a dual, triangular, or a conference meet. This would allow us to do it. And this isn't just about track. It could be used on a regular basis by physical education and other sports at Fargo North. Recently, we've been lucky to have a turf, and it's already making a huge impact on Fargo North athletics. We believe the track would have the same impact. Currently, Fargo North is the only school in the metro that doesn't have a track. I think if any school was built new, they're going to have a track and field. There's no doubt about that. Because of that, it only seems logical at this time to grant the same opportunity to the students at Fargo North. Building a program, I think, in any facet of sports is very important. A program without proper facilities is very hard to grow. If we wait too long, the program, especially if we don't have a track and nowhere else to go and we have to keep busing, the program's just going to be hurt for many years. His kids will not want to spend their time going to a different track to be able to participate. I believe that North not only needs a track, we need a track complex. We should have, just like other schools, a stand in a concession area that would allow us to properly use the property to its maximum potential. I also believe it's always easiest and best to do it right the first time and put in all the required stands, concessions, and other areas. In conclusion, I think a track is needed at Fargo North. It would really complete the campus. It's our hope that this could be completed as set forth in the long-range facility plan by the fall of 2022. If that's the case, we've already went through 2 years without having a track, and we would have to continue to bus kids to different places. It would have a tremendous impact on Fargo North athletics. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for joining us and for sharing. Victoria Johnson?
Do you mind if I pass this, Dr.?
Feel free.
Only for the boards. Sorry. You guys know how to reach me. Thank you. My name is Victoria Johnson. On February 12th of this year, we had sent a written request, as a written request for public record is under North Dakota state law. We did just that. We sent in a request asking for the data for Ukira. Fargo Public School responded to our request and stated, there is no data. This is the email of what we received back from Fargo Public School, said there was no data. This email we received on the 9th, on the 4th, March 4th. On March 9th, I came in front of the board and I told you there was no data, because that's what we were told. In an email, there was no data. That same day, on March 9th, you were presented with the data. So why didn't Fargo Public School produce that data to us when we asked for it? It's an open record request. That's a state law. But that data was not released to us when we asked for it. On Sunday, I came across an article that was sent to me by a friend. And the article stated that I came in the front of the board and challenged the data before it was introduced. That's what it says in the article. I didn't challenge the data. We didn't have a data. So what I just sent to you right now, what I hand out, is a second request we just sent to Fargo Public School, and that was on the 10th. After that meeting, when we saw the data presented to you, we sent that email to Fargo Public School asking for everything you're looking at in that paper. And so I'm not going to go into detail regards to that, what you have in front of you, because with the respect to Ms. Agnes, she wants to meet with me and talk about what we requested. So I'm going to have that conversation, and hopefully we can get those information given to us as we requested. So I just want to make sure that you understand that it was not that we came here, I came here to accuse you, is that we were told there was no data. There was no data. So the question is, why wasn't that released? Again, understand, North Dakota has an open record request law. I'm just leaving it there. Was their law violated? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But that data was not released to us. It was presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. On to the report section of the agenda. Item A is STEAM monitoring, Music in Our Schools Month. Ainsley Rentful.
All right, hello. Music in Our Schools Month. It is the last week, though of course music is always important in our schools. Just to start out, I did pass out a copy of this presentation, and I noticed you already had one, but there are a few pages in the back of the one that I passed out that I don't believe are in the prettier one. So today's presentation, I'm going to talk about three different things. One is the benefits of music education. The other is the NDDPI Music and SEL grant, and share some progress and news with you on that. And then celebrate and talk a little bit about the NAM Best Communities for Music Education Award. So if you saw the article in the Journey the second week of March, and it's also included in your packet, there is a ton of research and information about music's link to the core academic subjects and how it benefits the core academic subjects. I could go on for days and weeks about the research. There's a plethora, but three very, very basic benefits are literacy, math, and science, and there's just one point under each one there in the presentation, but again, a plethora of benefits. Also SEL and how that connects, but I will get to that later. I also have skills that music improves. Again, a plethora, lots and lots of skills, but it can be summed up by the bottom statement of music literally expands brain capacity for cognitive development, like literally and physically. I teach a college course, and that was in our textbook, and we had a long conversation about that, where that really, really sums it up. And as that sums it up, it's really important that all of our students do have access to music education, especially in this COVID year and next year as we see what I call the COVID bubble go through, where we will see lagging skills. And it is extremely important that music is offered to all students. If it is not, it really is pulling a support away from them. The lagging skills will only be improved by incorporating in their music education. So the music and social emotional learning, or SEL. Music and social emotional learning, similar to science, music is SEL. It's as easy as that. Music, they experience and they name emotions. It supports and promotes mental health. It extends beyond differences. It creates community and connections. And it is lifelong. You heard the high school students talk about how some will go into it as a profession and others will go into it as a consumer and a lover, and both are just as important. I have a sneak peek of this coming week's Journey article for you, and it is also in your packet. Like I said, I could write articles and share research about the benefits of music, but I thought, what better way to hear it from the students? So K through 12 students were asked, given the prompt of, when I'm in music class or band class, choir class, orchestra class, I feel. And you'll see in the article there's a lot more than what is on the screen, but these were some that stuck out to me in their own words. I think free to be my true self really stuck out to me. Like I'm a part of a group and we work hard together to achieve our goals. Respected, proud. Like I'm contributing to something more than myself. That one really struck me. And the top left one, safe. I think that's really powerful. So you'll see in the article on Thursday, as well as what's in front of you, there are many, many more, much more feedback from our own students. But those are some highlights. Also in there, what stuck out to me were two things. One, 21st century skills. I believe they're all mentioned within those statements. And again, SEL, safe, community, feeling supported. So moving on to the ND-DPI Music and SEL grant. Last year, we were awarded a 2-year grant. Most districts in North Dakota were awarded based on their student population. And we really used this grant kind of a 3-prong project. We had some professional learning. We had some guests come in, which I'll talk about in a moment. Dr. Scott Edgar and a training on Beat the Odds drum circle. We purchased drum circle drums for elementary classrooms, music classrooms. And then we formed a team and created a curriculum that incorporates SEL in the elementary music classroom. Like I said, it is naturally in there, but we really wanted to make that deliberate connection in the lessons. We really wanted to do something sustainable that would enrich our students moving forward and not just in these 2 years of the grant. So we created a curriculum, or we call it the Elementary Music SEL Handbook, which is not much more exciting than a curriculum, but at least, a little bit. So Dr. Scott Edgar came to visit last December, thankfully, when we were still open. And Dr. Scott Edgar, when you think of music and SEL, you think there's 2 big names that really are it. And one is Dr. Scott Edgar. He literally wrote the book, as you can see. He's written a few about it. So he came in and worked with our elementary music teachers, and he also is consulting with our curriculum writing team. So throughout this 2 years, we have worked with him on the curriculum, or the handbook, and he's consulted with us. The Beat the Odds drum training. This was this January, so thankfully we were able to be together, but you can see on the left side that we were in the gym at Jefferson, spaced apart, masked, but we were able to be together. Beat the Odds Drum Training is a program through UCLA that focuses on building community and SEL skills through drum circle. And quite simple drum circle activities. If you think of the origins of drum circles, it is to create community. But I have been very intimidated by drum circles because they're amazing. And I think, I can't do that. And this was really simplifying the skills and relating them directly to building community and SEL skills. So we had a day of that professional learning, and many teachers literally went back the next day and implemented this teaching in their classroom, which you can see in the picture on the right. The next day, the next week, and they've continued to do so. And that was part of why we purchased the drums as well. That was a really amazing experience. We got great feedback, and it's been put to such good use immediately in the music classrooms. And then our elementary music SEL handbook. So what we did was we took Castle's SEL framework and NDMTSS SEL learning goals and scales. And then we broke it down into specific grade level music tasks that are linked to SEL. So we drew that, like I said, that very clear connection. So in the chart there, you can see the Castle SEL framework is on the top, and then the learning goals and scales, the ICANS. The student's will is where we started creating. So we took those top two and created our own student's will statements. And then in our curriculum, our handbook, when you click on the student's will, it will pull up a document that has just a list of ideas, general ideas a music teacher could use in the elementary classroom that link SEL and music. There's also a written out lesson plan. We really wanted it to be accessible to all of our music teachers if they wanted to take one of those general ideas and make it their own, or if they're tiptoeing into the waters and want to start with that lesson plan that is printed for them. The other thing about this document is that it is a living document. So as we get into it, we will continue to adapt it and add and edit it. I imagine it growing immensely because as we get comfortable with it and share more ideas, we'll be able to add them. So the original goal was for all elementaries to implement the SEL handbook this year. There was a little excitement this year. So we did need to adapt our plan a little bit, and our curriculum writing team implemented this year, and our plan will be to implement fully next year. Currently, the curriculum is under review from a curriculum writing committee, curriculum review committee. And I just have to share, I mentioned that there were two big names in SEL and music. The other is Bob Morrison, and he is on the curriculum review team. So that's pretty, I mean, for a music education SEL dork, that's like amazing. And our own Jen Saar is also on the team, so we're getting her feedback too. So the plan is, like I said, to implement fully next year. I also just want to point out, this really is one of a kind. I mentioned this when I spoke in the fall, but Fargo elementary music has been brought up on the national level because of this project, because it's not happening other places. There's New Jersey has a similar project, but really those are the two. So it really is something special and something that's going to benefit our students so amazingly. All right, so that brings us to the celebration. In front of your seat, you have a framed certificate, and this is from Doug Schmidt of Schmidt Music. And he actually has a little recording that I'm going to play in a moment, and he will talk a little bit about Schmidt Music and about the NAMM company and the award and the best communities for music, how that works, how we earn that. So I'll play this. I'm going to warn you, I'm going to get my camera ready for the end. So.
Hello, my name is Doug Schmidt, one of the fourth generation owners of Schmidt Music. I'm here with you today to help celebrate the fine work that keeps happening in your music department for the 17th year in a row. I'd like to thank Ainsley Renfro, the Performing Arts Curriculum Specialist, Superintendent Rupak Gandhi, along with all our friends from the Fargo Public Schools, from all your friends at Schmidt Music, including my brother Tom and me, two of our sons, Pete and Ted, and Dan Miller, our Fargo store manager. At Schmidt Music, we just celebrated our 124th anniversary on November 16. We are in the music products industry, which includes instrument companies, publishers, retailers, and everyone else involved in helping you to be able to teach your students the fine art of music. Our music products industry has a trade association called the National Association of Music Merchants, or just NAM, which was established in 1901, just 5 years after our company was started. NAM is the association that strengthens the $17 billion global music products industry. In 1998, NAM established their Best Communities for Music Education Award. In 2020, its 22nd year, this program celebrates and recognizes innovative and resourceful music education programs in the United States and those schools and communities that support them. In order to apply for this award, Ainsley Renfro completed a 54-page survey that covers pretty much every aspect of your music education program. This survey was developed in partnership with the Music Research Institute at the University of Kansas. Survey questions are aligned with goals for equity and access to music education for all students and also with national standards for music education. In 2020, just 754 school districts earned this award out of more than 14,000 school districts in the United States. Of these 754 winners, 20 are serviced by Schmidt Music. This puts Fargo in the top 5% of music programs in the nation. Bravo! Dan Miller, Ainsley Renfro, and I all worked together to get your awards printed, framed, and delivered to everyone we could think of who was instrumental in making your music department so awesome for the 17th year in a row. If for any reason we may have missed someone or made a spelling mistake, please alert Ainsley and she can contact me so I can make those corrections and get new awards to you ASAP. Before I go, NAM loves to get pictures of people who win their awards, so if you're on camera and have your award handy, please raise it up and shout hip hip hooray for the Fargo Music Department. I'll count on Ainsley to grab a screenshot or some other means of getting me some pictures. Cheers, keep up your great work, and thanks for your ongoing support of Schmidt Music.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you. So I just wanted to recap what Doug shared about the NAM award, that it has been an award for 22 years, and we have earned it 17 out of those 22 years. We've earned it consistently since 2010, every year since then. And I just want to point out again, 754 districts out of 14,000, which puts us in the top 5% in the nation. On the left are some of the things that they look at. I know Dr. Gandhi had asked about this in the fall, and I emailed him a while ago promising I hadn't forgotten, but it was in the works. So equity and access to music education. Do our students all have access to it? Funding, how is it funded? Is it funded through the district? Programs, the variety of programs. Regional, state, and national performances, which if you saw the first Journey article, we had 82 students accepted into All-State this year. In this year of COVID, where our music classes have been exceptionally different, we had more than last year. Performance opportunities. Minutes of music education and how often. Really, it's the consistency there. Is it daily? Is it every other day, which is great? Or is it 5 or 6, a rotation of 5, 6, 7, once every 10 days? Because that consistency is really important. The percentage of music educators with master's degrees and so on. Location of music education and performances. Do they have their own dedicated space so that all of the music education is equal? There's that equity.
percentage of students enrolled in music groups, and then who supports the music programs and how. So the award is wonderful. We're very excited about that, but this is why we do it. This is why we build our program, is for the students. In this, like I said, in this COVID year, we know all programs have taken a hit. Music has really taken a huge hit. It has been very, very different, as you saw with our players earlier. We have had no performances. Just recently have some high schools been able to start performances. Many elementary still is not able to do performances. We have PPE that needs to be worn. We have very limited playing and singing time, no more than 30 minutes in a setting. Throughout this crazy year, we have all been fretting about what next year will look like for our programs. Our high school enrollment in music classes for next year is higher than it was for this year before COVID. There are some that are down and some that are up, but overall the numbers are higher. And that, I think about that constantly. I think that says something huge about what role music has played in our students' lives through this, though it might not have been the same as they're used to. I also think that speaks so highly of our teachers and what they have done to continue to have music be so important in students' lives. Our middle school numbers are lower because we did not have large group this year due to numbers, and we weren't able to go into the elementaries to recruit. So like I said, we will see this COVID bubble travel through, but I'm completely expecting that those numbers will rise again back to normal and above quickly. So I want to thank you for your support and for your time, and thank you for having the music programs be something that enriches our students' lives and empowers them to succeed. So thank you. I will be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Nikki?
Thank you so much, Ainsley. I just love to hear about this. I have to tell you, I believe you're 100% correct. I absolutely love music opportunities for our kids. You had mentioned elementary, that as this new curriculum comes together, it's kind of going to get launched there. Is there a plan to continue that through the upper levels?
I would love for it to be. In fact, I have talked to Scott Edgar about doing a similar thing for secondary. Of course, we wouldn't have that grant, but I think that there are things that we can do. And just out in the hall with the group before they came in, they were literally talking about SEL and music, the students. Oh yeah, it's, when we are moved by music and such. So it is definitely talked about in secondary, even though it hasn't been launched as much as the elementary.
Sure. Well, I'd love to see that continue through those levels.
Absolutely.
If we can do it. My next question, you may or may not be able to answer, but I'm curious because you alluded to it. For kids, some kids find their niche, they find their spot. This is where they feel safe, they feel important, they feel creative. Do we have any type of statistics? I know music is one piece of the arts, but are there statistics out there that might indicate how this impacts kids as they grow throughout their lives? Do we have any information like kids that maybe are more at risk, that this being kind of, I don't know if I want to say a support avenue, but
Sure.
an activity that can help redirect some of that angst?
Yeah, I am sure there's again, plethora of that data out there for sure.
Yeah.
I don't have any at my fingertips, but
Sure.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
everything that you do. The next item is a report on foreign languages. Dr. Gandhi?
Sure. So thank you, Board President and board members. Along with National Music in Our Schools Month, this month we also celebrate National Foreign Languages Week. That's something that's celebrated in our district as well. After viewing a previous presentation, I think on CTE, Mr. Erlacher had reached out and said, can we do a presentation on behalf of the World Language Program that in our Fargo Public Schools, which is a phenomenal program. So this is a presentation that also fits in under our STEAM monitoring report, results report as well. They will present today on not only the World Language Program that we have in the district, but when we're working together, I'd also asked them to present on some of the work that our world language teachers have been engaging in multiple years with Dr. Gross and the task force around the future or possibilities for a foreign language or immersion program. If, for those of you that remember, that was something that we brought to the state of the schools. That's something that we would love to see in our district moving forward as well. So they'll include some of that in their presentation as well. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to Mr. Erlacher.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening. I just want to share a little information with you guys. Maybe you're not as familiar with world languages, but we do offer 4 languages: French, German, Latin, and Spanish. We start in 7th grade with a world language survey class that exposes students to the language, and then they can start in 8th grade, continue through high school. We do have a fairly large department. There are 24 excellent full-time teachers, and then each of our high schools offer extracurricular clubs for those. You can look at the screen there and see that we do have 4 strong programs in each of the languages. And our students 8 through 12, 41% of our students participate in a language, so it's a very large chunk of our students. I just want to kind of set this up with a couple of quotes, just for those of you who have studied a language or haven't, or speak another language, just to kind of get your mind thinking about what does it mean to be able to speak another language and what does that do for your life. So the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. So kind of, I know myself, when I was a student, being able to travel to other countries, not worry about not being able to speak the language and connect with local people. Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in a language in his own language, that goes to his heart. So just thinking about our students being able to connect with other people on their level versus someone coming to us on our level. And then finally, this journalist said, learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. And so working on those critical thinking skills, creative thinking, that languages do a lot more for us than just being able to speak. There is lots of different research that how it impacts the brain, improves communication skills, gives us social gains. When students attend college, they can also oftentimes bypass credits, get those for free, move into upper levels, so that's a huge benefit for our students who follow through. It does improve test scores. Of course, it increases students and adults' travel opportunities, and then it does focus on a lot of those 21st century skills that we're trying to instill in our students. A couple of different partnerships that we've had in our district over the last years. We have Latin Days, which used to be hosted by Concordia, now it's at UND. We've collaborated with different college courses in high school so that high school students can see what they're learning at the college level and vice versa. We've had foreign exchange students come into our classes. We have the Concordia Language Villages not too far from us, elementary exploration programs. And then NDSU and our Latin program also hosted the National Junior Classical League Convention back in 2019 here in Fargo, which was a huge deal for them. And then this is some pictures from that convention. As Dr. Gandhi kind of referenced, that back in 2019, one of the questions at the state of schools was a question about elementary immersion. And so the first question just said, the district is currently researching elementary language immersion programs. If Fargo Public Schools develops a language immersion program, what language should be the foundation of the program? And I think their 5 options are Spanish, German, French, Latin, or Mandarin Chinese, okay? Now, I kind of went through all those comments and we picked out a couple that we thought were the best. Someone commented that they speak 5 languages and that would be the best way to learn it, is starting at the elementary age. I was most excited about this question. I know the other question was dress code, so maybe there wasn't a lot of competition, but it is an exciting topic, especially for us. Someone said they love the idea of immersion. Whatever gets it going faster is the one to go with, so they really maybe didn't care which language it was, but let's just get this happening. And then finally, why does it have to be just one? Could we have it at more than one school? Because I think that it was proposed as to being if we had one school, we could use it. A couple other comments. The earlier we can implement, the better. Would love to have an opportunity to have this in our district if Fargo wants to be competitive. As you guys probably know, Moorhead has an immersion school, and so hopefully that would, we'd probably have some students who choose to petition to go over to Moorhead, so this might keep some of our students here in our district. And then, of course, starting with the younger immersion program at the elementary would open up larger opportunities for them when they get older. Middle school sometimes is maybe too late to start because that's our first exposure. Almost this person almost felt inferior not knowing another language. And then talking about just a thirst for students to want to keep learning. We would go anywhere to have this program. And then should all students be taking a foreign language from the time they're in kindergarten, which I know our task force has looked at that. It's a huge financial expense, but is it worth that for the students? And I would beg to say yes. The second question talked about if they were to create a program, would the location of where that program is located affect the decision? And so I think what we took away from that was that, I know in the group that I was in, that if we had one location maybe on each side, each kind of part of town to start to build off of, then students would need to be bused to a different area. So a couple things that we would ask you to consider as we're kind of continuing to work on this is that staffing is going to be very critical. We would really need to partner with local universities because teachers would need to be duly certified in the language that they're teaching as well as an elementary ed degree. We would need to determine the type of program. Is it a program that is a full immersion? Is it partial immersion? Is it an exposure to languages for all students? And then thinking about how many programs would we want, one on the north side, the middle side, and south side to give everyone access to that program. And then as you guys are thinking of your facilities usage, if it were a magnet program, eventually where would those students continue on to middle school or high school? So those are just some things we wanted you guys to consider. And now I'm just going to turn it over to Jill Berger, and she's going to talk a little bit about Foreign Language Week and our Seal of Biliteracy.
All right, hello. I am Jill Bergren. I teach French at Davies, and I've been teaching here in Fargo for 25 years now. So I've taught French with the 8th graders at Discovery. I've been at South High. I worked at, what did we call it? South Campus 2 during that transition time. And now I'm at Davies. So I've worked with all levels of languages. And I'm here just to tell you about some of the celebrations that we do with our students in March, because March is Foreign Language Week. And then I also wanted to tell you about the seals of biliteracy. We have been working for the last couple years to get the North Dakota Seal of Biliteracy for our students at Davies High School. And I wanted to tell you there's another seal called the Global Seal of Biliteracy that our students have also been awarded. So I was going to tell you a little bit about those things. So first of all, Foreign Language Week takes place every second week in March. And it's really a time for us with our students to stop and reflect and talk about why are we learning a language, what are the benefits of being proficient in more than one language. But truthfully, it's to recognize and celebrate their efforts in learning a language. And every year we do this in different ways. We really try to bring the community in and collaborate with them. So we have university students come in and talk about experiences abroad. We have exchange students come in and talk about what it's like to live in a different country. We also have had speakers from the Defense Language Institute come in, which has been really fascinating for our students to learn about. College admission speakers come in and share about languages in the colleges. But I think one of the funnest things we do is we collaborate with our ELL programs at our schools. And we bring in the ELL students, and they do cultural presentations, speak about their country, speak about the immigrant experience. And at Davies the last few years, we've been doing a cultural festival where the students go to different rooms and different stations, and they dance and they sing and they eat, and it's just a time to laugh and really enjoy each other. And it's a great way for our students to meet a lot of the diverse kids that are in our buildings. So it's a really great time, and we love it. To tell you about the seals of biliteracy, I love this quote. Language is not a college requirement. It's an enviable life skill. And I think in the high schools, we really, really stress this with the students. It's not just about getting into college. It's something that's going to be really useful in your future. So the North Dakota Seal of Biliteracy looks like that. And the students, when they're awarded those seals, that gets put on their diploma. It also goes on to their e-transcript, so it follows them on to college. To just tell you a little bit about the history of the Seals of Biliteracy, it started out in California, and the first Seal of Biliteracy was awarded in 2011. And then states have sort of been joining on each year as we go. So North Dakota decided to get the Seal of Biliteracy in 2019. That was the first year that it was offered to North Dakota students. I really want to give a shout out to Lodi Arnold at the DPI. She was huge in getting this going for us. Mary Thrond also, who has taught at the universities here in Moorhead, she's now at Morris, was really great in helping us get this set up and going. So in 2019, we did this over at Davies, and I'll tell you a little bit about the process of how to get the seal, but those are the numbers that we awarded the first year. And again, there are 3 seals. There's a silver seal and a gold seal, which are both North Dakota Seals of Biliteracy, and then the Global Seal of Biliteracy. Last year, the numbers were a little bit lower, but we were incredibly proud of those kids because we were doing everything online. They had to take the test virtually on their own at home without any prep, without any practice, and they did it the last week of May, right at graduation time. We were incredibly proud of them. It was an amazing thing for those students that were awarded those seals. So the North Dakota Seal of Biliteracy is awarded to graduating students, it's seniors, who have demonstrated proficiency in a language in addition to English. In North Dakota, we have a silver seal and a gold seal. And the students take a proficiency assessment in speaking, reading, writing, and listening skills. And we do that in French, German, and Spanish. There is also a Latin Seal of Biliteracy, and they use a different assessment, which is reading. The assessment that we use is developed by ACFL, which is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and the assessment is called the APPLE. And that is an assessment that is set up to really assess their proficiency in the language skills. So it's not a multiple choice Scantron type test. They are really speaking and recording themselves. They are writing in the language, listening, and reading the language. So those modalities are there. In the state of North Dakota, the way the APPLE is set up is there is novice level, intermediate level, and advanced level. And our students in the high school at level 4, we rate them at the intermediate level. And within the intermediate level, there are 5 different stages that they go through. So when they take the APPLE proficiency exam, if they meet intermediate 1 at all 4 of those modalities, they would be awarded the silver. If they get to an intermediate 5, which is the top of the intermediate level, they would be awarded the gold. And then the global seal is sort of in the middle there with the intermediate 4. So the majority of our students earn a seal. Many of them earn 2. So they might earn the silver and the global seal, or they might earn the global seal and the gold. What's really great about this is the students receive a report card. They get their assessment scores back from the APPLE testing organization. There are really extensive rubrics that go along with that, and they see exactly where they have been rated. We really love this because it's not us that's doing the grading, it's an outside group that takes a look at their work, and it's much more standardized that way. I love this because I'm now using this in my classroom. So as we look at evidence-based grading, I am grading my students now using this APPLE scale, starting at level 1, so that they're very familiar with it, and it all meshes together with what we're asking them to do in level 4. The final part of the seal, they need to demonstrate sociocultural competency, and the way we've been doing that is through an essay. But our hopes in the future, when we get past everything that's going on, is that we'll be doing some year-long social projects with the students, where they're able to choose a global idea to work in small groups. And so that's what we're hoping to develop in the future with this sociocultural piece. These are some quotes from those student essays, just talking a little bit about language, how language has impacted their lives and learning a language. And it's a lot more than words. It's a lot about perspectives and being able to think differently and view the world in a different way. And I think these essays really, really show how much the kids have grown in their journey of learning language. That is the first group of North Dakota that earned the seal of biliteracy in 2019. Lots of benefits, and I'm not going to read through all of those. There are so many benefits in learning a language. The other thing that's great to know about these seals of biliteracy, it's not just students learning our foreign languages. EL students also are able to earn this seal of biliteracy as well with their native languages and their heritage languages. And our EL programs are working with that. It's a little more difficult to find assessments for some of the languages that those students speak. And so that's another piece of this that's really great. Why should they earn the seal? Parents and students often ask this. You may receive college credit when you come to a university with this seal. Scholarship assistance, it's also an upgrade in branches of the military often. A lot of job and internship opportunities when you have this seal of biliteracy. In Minnesota now, all of their students that have the seal of biliteracy out of high school, the colleges and universities offer them credit when they get into the university. So the students who earn a platinum seal in Minnesota get 4 semesters of college credit automatically. That's something that is offered to all high school students going on to the university. We would love to see that with the North Dakota universities as well, and that's something that is being talked about. Global seal of biliteracy, quickly, it's the same concept, they do the same assessment, but it's recognized across the world. And so this is a seal that is exciting for the students because they can earn it in high school at the functional fluency level. They can go on to college and assess again and work up through their college, university years, and even as a working adult, a professional, you can continue to earn these seals. And my seniors were really excited about that this year. Like, we can keep doing it? And yeah. So we're going to finish today. These are some of our level 4 language students, just showing off their proficiency. And we will just click. Okay. All right.
Hola, me llamo Emily. Tengo 17 años. Vivo en Fargo y soy estudiante de Colegio Davies. Aprendí una lengua extranjera porque las lenguas son las llaves del mundo. En el futuro, me gustaría viajar a España.
Guess the language. Espagnol.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Pablo. J'aime le français parce que c'est une langue très élégante. J'ai 17 ans, je suis de Fargo et je suis un élève au lycée de Davies. J'apprends une autre langue parce que je veux pouvoir communiquer avec des nouvelles personnes. Et dans le futur, je voudrais voyager en France, mais plus spécifiquement à Paris.
Oui. Français. Guess this one.
Salvete, mihi nomenes Josh, habeo septendecem annos. Habito in Fargo et sum discipulos ad scholam Davies, didici linguam latinam pro negotio. In futuro velim fieri medicus.
So impressed.
Hallo, ich heiße Christian, ich bin 15 Jahre alt. Ich wohne in Fargo und ein Student an der Davies High School. Ich habe eine andere Sprache gelernt, weil ich dachte, es war interessant für mich. In Future würde ich gerne reisen nach Deutschland, weil ich habe gelernt cool Dinge über Deutschland.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? You can answer.
Anyone have questions? I have questions, but I might have to do it as a follow-up. because I have quite a few. Dr. Newman.
Hi, thank you guys so much. This is wonderful to hear. I have a number of hearing impaired patients and families in my practice. I'm curious if you've ever wondered about sign language, offering that as or do we in Fargo Public Schools?
Here at Fargo Public Schools, I don't know that that's come up. No. I was going to say, I believe there is a seal of biliteracy that they are working on for that.
I think, other schools do offer that in their
yeah.
form. I was just curious if that's ever been considered or what that would entail.
I don't know if we.
I don't know either. Right, yeah.
Other questions or comments? Jennifer.
Thank you for being here, and that presentation was wonderful. I learned an awful lot through it myself. I am curious how frequently this exam or this certification or seal is offered for students to be able to take.
Currently it's seniors. Okay, so we do it in level 4 language usually. It's our graduating seniors, and typically in all the states, that's how that is done. It's done with graduating level 4 seniors. We also are offering it to our level 3 students to get them used to what the assessment is like. Also, it gives them all kinds of information about where they're at. It shows them what their proficiency level is. We've talked a great deal about using this assessment all the way through our program. So starting out in level 1, having them take the assessment, and it'll track their proficiency as they go. We do have some seniors that are in level 3 language. They are also eligible, and often they will take the Apple as well. I had a senior last year in level 3 who got the gold. Yeah, so it's usually juniors and seniors, graduating students.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have questions? One question, I might have two. So thank you for representing Davies and sharing this information. How about for our other high schools?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I meant to mention that. This year, both South and North High are on board. We're getting them ready to go. We're starting the assessments next week. And so for them, it's their first time through using the Apple assessments. So it will be in all 3 high schools this year.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the information. Wondering too, do counselors share this information with students? It's new or newer to the district. So I'm thinking about other students that have been involved in foreign language that would said, oh gosh, I wish I would have known this and maybe I would have stuck with it. Right. Because having this on a diploma, as you have said, it seems like, my goodness, it helps build the resume credibility of the students. So just kind of curious to hear about what the plan would be in terms of helping to further educate our students, to help encourage them to perhaps stick with a foreign language.
Yeah, that's excellent. Did you want to add anything starting at the
I think
middle
we'll
school?
probably just work with Dr. Gross to kind of to get that information out, so they have it starting in the middle school and moving up forward. So that's an awesome thing to be able to offer them and let them know about.
Yeah, and we really do need to talk to them and explain this to them, and now that we've got it up and rolling, at our 8th grade course fair this year, we added that element to it so that this information is all getting out to the parents. Yeah, starting in 8th grade.
Great, thank you so much. Jennifer?
Thank you for asking that question. I think it's a great one. And I am curious, it also made me think of, do we know the stats between those that have taken a 3rd-year foreign language who continue to take a 4th, or that maybe end after their junior year for a variety of reasons? Do we know what that number is?
We can find out, yeah. I mean, yeah, we have those numbers and those statistics each year, the number of kids that continue on. Yeah.
And part of the reason I'm asking is really to Rebecca's question around heightened awareness, right? Would this be something that would motivate kiddos
I think so.
to stay in the program one more year after putting in all that time too? So.
And I would say those of us that teach upper levels, most of our level 3 kids do go on to level 4. I would say it's a majority of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I do think this is a big carrot for a lot of them. It's exciting for them.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for being here. Wonderful information. Nikki, oh, she has her hand up, yes?
Popped it up. I don't know if it's worth sharing or not, but you were Emily's French teacher, and she loves French, and she started it in middle school. And she got kind of scared off this year, and I'm sharing this for the benefit of the COVID bubble that we're talking about. She did not sign up for French this spring because when COVID hit, she said, "Mom, we didn't learn everything we needed to learn to be successful in your class." And so she felt bad about it. Now she wants to circle back, and she wants to take French again, but she wants to start over because she feels like she was missing some core pieces that in the 9th grade, you should have those pieces in place. But with the COVID situation and being online, she didn't feel she had those. And she had some friends that felt the same. So I truly hope they do circle back. And then I'm thinking, to your point, if she had had any idea, I'm sitting here going, Emily needs to know. Because she's all about what's going on in my diploma, how's this going to serve me afterwards?
Yep.
And so I think it's a very valid point. And thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again, and have
Thank
a
you.
great evening. Thanks for being
Great
here.
questions, yeah.
We have been at it for a little bit over an hour. Are we okay to keep going? All right. And we are on to item B under reports. Academic performance, graduation rate data. Dr. Gross.
Thank you very much. I'm just waiting for the, oh. While we wait, at your table is a copy of the slideshow that I'll just go over with you this evening. There are two presentations that we will be sharing with you tonight. Both of them center around our strategic initiative number 1, student achievement and growth. And the first piece that we want to talk a little bit about is graduation rate. So as we look at our strategic plan, we know that first initiative is student achievement and growth. It says that based upon our efforts, our students will meet or exceed individual learning goals towards the achievement of district standards and benchmarks for the academic proficiency in all content areas. And then we drill down a little bit further, and there's a section on an assessment. I won't read that, but what you'll see is it talks about, as a system, we'll both use formative and summative assessments. Formative assessments during the course of the learning so that we can then assess where our students are at and then make some of those adjustments to help them be as successful as possible. And then those summative assessments that help us determine if students have mastered the content before they move on to the next course or class or even unit. Then we get down to our indicators, and in the strategic plan, the indicator that we're looking at tonight is around graduation rate. And it says the percentage of high school students who graduated on time will increase annually. So we are looking at the 2019-20 graduation rates. That's the most recent data that we have to share with you this evening. How it is determined is this description. Basically, we start with all of the students who enter 9th grade, and we create a cohort. And then we add in any students who transfer in during grade 9, 10, or 11, and 12. And then we take out only those students who then transfer out at any one time. So really it is a cohort model. In order for a student to be given credit to meet this criteria, they must graduate in those 4 years. Sometimes it takes a student a 5th year. It might even take a student a 6th year, dependent upon where they are at. And we know that, but the data that we're looking at tonight is that 4-year graduation rate. So on our strategic plan dashboard, anyone in our community can go to our dashboard under achievement and then click on the graduation rate link. And here is just kind of our trend data for the past multiple years. In the year 2018-19, which we would be comparing against to see if we met our goal or not, we had a graduation rate of 84%. Then as we look at the most recent data for 19-20, you will see we are at 87%. So an increase of about 3% between last year when we looked at this data and today. So based upon that, if we look at that indicator, seeing that an increase annually, we would say that our graduation rate from 1920 is greater than the graduation rate for 1819. So we would have met that indicator of our strategic plan. That certainly doesn't come easily because we have that goal of all students graduating on time, knowing that some of the students may take a little bit longer, but to help our students graduate on time, our teachers are doing a tremendous job of providing interventions and extensions for our students during the typical class day. But then on top of that, we have intervention programs at all of 3 of our comprehensive high schools, where this year we actually have, before the very first period of the day, the opportunity for students to come in and get interventions and extensions in all of their courses and classes. We actually have a bus run that will help students get to those interventions, so that if transportation is an issue, we have taken that away for students to get those interventions. We have online credit recovery for our students at all of our 3 comprehensive high schools, where students who may have been unsuccessful the first time as they attempted a course or class have the opportunity to learn and relearn those standards. And then, like I said, our teachers are just doing a wonderful job on providing the tutoring for our students to be successful. At our alternative high school, which will have a new name soon, we certainly have that program for the students who, through our school of choice, they have the opportunity to come to at school. In or at our alternative high school, we have an advisor program, so a connection between the students and the teachers. And during that advisor program, students are able to earn credit for that advisory. So as they march towards getting the credits they need for graduation, not only have we provided that program, but the opportunity to earn credit. And then at our alternative high school, there's an active reach out for any student who may have decided to drop out, and everything is done to get those students back into our school setting. We have a night school program in which we offer English, U.S. history, econ, and government, another opportunity for students to earn some of the credits they need for graduation, and then our summer school and the large number of courses that we offer for our students. And I think this year we will see a even larger number of students taking advantage of summer school, elementary, middle school, and high school, as we do the very best we can to increase that graduation rate. So in the end, as we look at graduation rate tied back to our strategic plan, we could say that we have met this indicator of success.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gross. Any questions? Jennifer?
Thank you, Dr. Gross. So my question is related to breaking this out in relationship to subgroups. Do we track data on multiple subgroups, and what does that look like?
We do, and I didn't bring that forward tonight, but as you go to our strategic plan dashboard, you'll notice on the right-hand side, grayed out are the individual buildings. You can click on a building and get the data for any of our buildings. And then on our site and the North Dakota Insight website, you can get that graduation rate for the students by our different ethnicities and free and reduced status and so on. We certainly look and review that data on a yearly basis. I think Tamara Usselman, who has been hired to be part of our team, is doing a marvelous job of helping us look at that data and try to determine what some of those next steps are. So this is just an overview of the data, and it is certainly something that we do to drill down into the data to say what can we do differently to get that graduation rate even higher than 87%.
Jennifer?
Thank you. If I just may add on to your point around insights, breaking it out further, you know, by gender or low income or IEP students in those subgroups. And I guess more specifically, within your own district plan through administration, are there, if what I'm hearing you saying, there is a movement towards, or maybe you've already been doing this, targeted strategic initiatives that might vary just depending upon the group, that you're, trying to move in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think across our system, we embed that MTSS, or multi-tier system of support, which is what do we need for all of our students? Then we need to drill into that data at a more finite set, and then determine where are some students who might not be where we want them to be. What do they need? That is going to look differently than, or different than what another group of students might need. It is our counselors, our principals, our teachers, and teaching and learning that are looking at that data to help us make some of those determinations for what are those right interventions. I think one of those pieces would be our early morning intervention time. Before this year, and this might not be the best year because of COVID, we had those intervention times spread out throughout the day. Based upon the data that we looked at, we said we needed a consistent time so that all students, no matter if they had a free period or not, would have the opportunity for some of those interventions. So that was something that was created. We applied for that waiver to DPI and were accepted, and then put that in place. That's just one example of looking at the data to say, what do we need to do differently?
Thank you. Dr. Gandhi?
I'd say in addition to that, part of our continuous improvement process is that we as a district have a district improvement plan with certain goals that are based on different metrics or different data points that we are looking at as a district. And then those get translated down at each building to certain school improvement plans. The school improvement plans are aligned to the district plan, so we're all working seamlessly. But one of the pieces where the schools have their own autonomy based on their school-based data as it relates to academic achievement is something that Tamara and our teaching and learning team are putting together, which is at the end of this year and then moving forward, there will always be at least one equity-related goal, which is focused on the discrepancy in student subgroup populations. So at one school, it might be based off a racial disparity in achievement data, and another school might be a gender disparity. I think that's just part of continuous improvement process. We know that we've learned this year that different educational environments work for some groups of kids. It doesn't for others. So we are always going to have to look at which group of students is something not working for, and then how are we creating a goal around them to provide the additional supports that they need. I saw Missy raised her hand as well.
My mic, oh, there we go. I'm just going to read you our initiative that we added this year around this equity piece, is that we will analyze outcome data by student group, race, ethnicity, SES, cultural linguistic diversity, gender, and disability. And then we would look at that in our response to equity in our system. And so that is the goal we have for this year. And again, Tamara is our leading us through that process.
Thank you.
Great information. All right, let's move on to the second academic performance report, MAP data. Missy Eidsness and Dr. Gross.
I think I'm going to start this, and then we're going to go back and forth as we talk a little bit about elementary and secondary data. So again, around the same strategic initiative, and that is, making sure that our students are proficient around the same goal area, which again is assessment. But now the indicator of success that we want to look at tonight is this one that says the percentage of students meeting their individual growth targets on the district's interim assessment, and that's the measures of academic progress, will increase annually. So a lot of times you might hear us talk about MAP, and that is the measures of academic progress. So the data that we want to look at tonight would be for the 1920, no, I'm sorry, there's a typo here. This would be our current data, so I want to make sure I correct that. On our strategic plan dashboard that anyone in the community can go to, under achievement, you can go and click on MAP, or measures of academic progress. And there we have this description about what percentage of students should meet their growth target. When we've shared this in the past, we've talked about what should our goal be. So we went to the source, and the source is Northwest Evaluation Center, and really looked at their research. And it's in the second paragraph that's on the screen. It talks about that the goal that is created in the assessment, typically a student is anywhere from 1 standard deviation above or below, and in the example that's on the screen, they say maybe 8 points above, 8 points below. And based upon that, if you were trying to say what should be a good goal for our district, they are saying that it's reasonable that 50% of the students should meet their goal or exceed. That's not saying that only 50% of our students are growing, but based upon an analysis of what percentage should meet that target growth, that would be, according to the researchers, their suggestion based upon that. So that's why on any of the data charts that we provide to our community, there is a dotted line when we look at growth, and that dotted line is at that 50% mark. So I'm going to turn that over to Missy to talk a little bit about our elementary data.
Yes, so on each of the data tonight, when we go through for elementary and middle school, we will also touch on a student group that probably is having the most difficulty reaching their growth goals. So we did take a look at those areas. On the public website, you can see you could look at any of those student groups that are listed on the right. And its nice thing is it allows you to look at them all at once if you'd like, or one at a time, and that can be up to you as you go through that. So the first one we have here is grades 3 through 5 reading, and again, since we're looking at growth, they have to have been in the district for both tests, last year and this year. So this really does give us a true representation of COVID, because it was last winter and then they took it again this winter. And so this is reading, and we are really seeing what we might see in a typical year. And so that we did not see a sharp decline in reading for grades 3 through 5 like we might have been expecting. We do have a slight drop, and that still means that we have kids that have some needs that we have to look at meeting. I did do a little reflection, thinking that there are some things that we benefited from in Fargo, being able to have our kids be back in person on day 1, even though it was in hybrid. We switched to 4 days a week around October 26th, and then 5 days a week around January 19th. And students that were in our virtual academy were able to continue consistently across. So I do want to give some credit for that we were able to meet, and there's some districts that have not as we go forward. Our group that, in our student groups, our Hispanic group was meeting their growth average at 43.6%. So that was our group that we noticed. And we're, both Dr. Gross and I were looking, is there a pattern of the group that seems to be struggling? And elementary and middle school did not have the same pattern. And we'll take a look at that. So that would be for reading. I'll have Dr. Gross go on. Mathematics, this was interesting, and we will show you as it goes through. In math, we are seeing the same significant drop across. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. But again, that is below that 50 percentile where we think we should be. And so seeing that drop, we're starting to speculate and develop what we think is going on. Is it the direct instruction? Is it the guided practice, math being more linear, and curriculum for student needs? So we are doing some digging into that. The student group that was for growth was 31.8% for our free and reduced lunch students. And for that group that we want to take a look at that, meeting their growth targets for elementary.
So then as we look at our middle school, and we're going to stop at grade 8 for this evening, you can see a similar pattern to the elementary from the winter 2020 to the winter 2021. There is a slight decrease in the percentage of students meeting that growth goal, but it is above that target that we have, but certainly not in the trajectory that we want it to be in. So I don't think this would be atypical for Fargo, for North Dakota, or our nation as we are dealing with some of the issues around COVID. But it is something that we look into, and we will talk a little bit more about some of the additional data analysis that we are doing now and will do in the future.
I have that.
I don't have my notes in front of me. They're on our screen, so would you mind?
Yeah, I will get that. So for the middle school in reading, our student group that we want to take a look at is our Native American students with 45.6% meeting their reading target.
Then if we look at mathematics, the chart, the data looks very similar to elementary. Again, we are below that 50% that we want to stay above, and we do see a fairly dramatic decrease in the percentage of students who are meeting their growth target from 2020 to 2021. And then if we drill into the subgroups of our student population in mathematics at the middle school,
It is also Native American at 28.8% meeting their growth targets.
so to come back to the indicator of success, we would definitely say that we did not meet this indicator that's in the strategic plan. But what is happening based upon that is we are looking at the data in probably a more finite matter or way, and this actually came to us from one of the companies that we work with, and so I'd like to give credit to Houghton Mifflin and Harcourt. And what they have done is they have taken our map data for us. They have then used a longitudinal study to say if a student scores here on the map assessment, connecting it back to proficiency or proposed proficiency on our state assessment, and then broken that down into different tiers based upon that multi-tier system of support. Basically where tier 1 is for all students. We want all of our students to be successful in that tier 1. Tier 2, those students who probably need a little bit more direct intervention, and then tier 3 who need that real intensive interventions. So on this chart, what you can see in grade 5 is just the difference between kind of a pre-COVID and post-COVID, the percentage of students in each of those categories. And as you look at this data, you can see the tier 3 and tier 2 and intensive and supplemental, those areas have grown, and the areas of tier 1 or tier 1 plus have diminished. So then what we will do is take this data, drill even closer to who are those students, what are the interventions that they need, and what can we do to help them be successful. So data like this has been gathered around 5th grade. Here would be a similar look at mathematics. Again, as we drill down to that correlation study between MAP, the state assessment, and then bringing it down to those tiers of interventions. Similar pattern. Now, these were just 2 examples of grade levels. We are working both with the corporation who helped us with this, but also on our own to get this data. And then based upon that, what's happening across our district, just like I talked about during the graduation presentation, our staff are providing interventions for our students within the classrooms today. And they're doing a marvelous job. As our students have come back to our full day instruction, we are seeing small group reading instruction. We're seeing small group math instruction. And we're not waiting, we're providing some of those interventions right now. We're expanding our summer school opportunities so that this summer, probably more students will take advantage of that summer opportunity for interventions. Providing some busing services for students so that transportation shouldn't be an issue for summer school. We have teams across the district who are helping us to create those further diagnostic tools of looking at how do we identify those students for each of those tiers. The data that I shared with you is just one of those pieces. We need to look at other data as well to say what do our students need to be successful. At the same time, we have teams who are researching and developing additional tier interventions that we want to then implement during that 2021 school year. We, like I mentioned earlier, have restructured the day at the high school to provide that intervention and extension time. We're providing the busing for our students. We will again apply for that waiver so that we can continue that into next school year. Currently and into the future, in our high schools, we have some double block mathematics courses where a student who needs the gift of time for Algebra 1 or Algebra 2 might take that over the course of 2 periods instead of 1. So more instruction and more intensive instruction can be given to those students. And then we have our online credit recovery. These are just a few of the things that we're doing based upon the data that we have available, and we'll continue to grow and develop both the tools to identify the students and then what interventions we want to put in place to help them be successful.
And I'll just add a couple to that. We received a grant through the state called the GEAR Grant. The GEAR Grant allowed us to hire 2 attendance specialists, 2 additional SWIFTs in our system, and some high school intervention time. And so that's looking at, again, the whole child and meeting the needs. So with our additional SWIFTs, we've been able to meet with more families who need assistance. The attendance specialist has really been a nice addition. And what they're doing is they're taking the chronic absentee list, working with each building level principal, and really getting the students on that list in a cycle of making sure they're making contact every week about attendance needs as we go forward. A lot of times they end up referring them for whatever their need is. We're also working on them coming up with a monthly report for us to dig into the attendance data. So recently, and that'll be coming in our principal meeting this week, they are breaking down every building, their data by race, ethnicity, by male, female, by grade level or age, and so that we can do a deeper dive and start looking at, because if they're not in school, they're not learning. And that's something that we might have to consider as a subgroup to look at, is students who are chronically absent and their academic progress as we go forward. So that was just one piece of that support that we're looking at. For the elementary, we are looking at if the state is supporting us to go forward with extending the summer school type learning, do we look at extended day option next school year with busing to allow kids over time to get additional support without pulling them out of their regular day? And so again, we will keep kind of researching and looking at what can we do to support our students, especially in the area of mathematics. We also had the numbers on there, so it shows how at the different tier levels, the number of kids, we have more kids who need that. So we do not want to ignore tier 1 and the power of the classroom teacher. We are doing a workforce with a team of teachers this spring on literacy at the elementary and looking at the science of reading and our current system and how do we support those 2 pieces together.
I think as we look at this data and language is critical. As most of you may have heard during this legislative session, and then just even the narrative around the nation, that students are falling behind because of the COVID pandemic, and obviously there's merit to that, and there's data points that people can point to. But understanding how to utilize data is extremely important, especially even as a board member, not only for communication, but also for strategic planning and for resources as well. When you look at a growth measure that's in MAP, yeah, you do have less % of students that are hitting their predictive growth measure that they had created prior to knowing even the possibility of a global pandemic and a different instructional model. So yes, you may have less people or less students that are hitting the expected growth measure from year after year. However, that does not mean that those students are growing. When you actually take a look at the data going further to the stack charts that Mrs. Eidnes and Dr. Gross shared, that becomes more important information because as a higher performing school district, if we had a larger percentage of students that were in tier 1 plus or tier 1 that fell out of those, but they fell into tier 2 intensive or tier 2 support, okay, we know that now they need additional support, but that is not the same level of assumption that some people would make, saying that all students have fallen behind by 2 grade levels. That's just not the truth. So in the 2 grade level examples we gave you, there is a larger increase in tier 2 and tier 2 intensive than there is in the tier 3, which makes me a little bit happier because I think that's, even though it might be more students, it's a lesser level of support and direct instruction that we have to do. And as a district, being able to understand that's critically important because as board members, we know that we can't just allocate our resources to say all kids fell behind during COVID, so we need to just do X, because that's not going to be efficiently solving the issue. It's being able to understand and take a look at, well, okay, what do we need to do for tier 2 interventions and who are those students who fell into that group? And it might be more students need a smaller level of intervention than a larger group that need a smaller level of intervention. So being able to do that and understand that's going to be important too, especially as we work with legislators and everyone else that just looks at data and says, extend your school year or do whatever the case is. We have to drill down deeper.
Robin.
I'm clearly not an educator, and nobody anticipated what we were going through, but I could not have more confidence in our professional staff and what they are doing right now to address the individual needs of each of our students. I do not think that it would be wise to forget about that. So thank you, thank you, thank you for what you're doing. I am confident most of our public does not understand how much you individualize your response to this either. So thank you for that. The data is what the data is, and I, again, am completely confident that you and your team are going to do what we need to get us back. There is some talk at the legislative level about not requiring state assessments. Are we going to forego that, or what is Fargo Public Schools going to opt on that? Because I know they're important to figure out where we're lapsing, but compared to what you have, what are we thinking?
So I've had the opportunity to be part of one of these statewide committees. And on that committee, we talked about the use of the state assessment. I think there are two purposes for it. One is for identifying areas of need, and the other is for more accountability purposes. The state is going to apply for a waiver on the second, so that we don't need to use it for the accountability component of it, but we can use it for data to say, what can we do differently for the kids we have the opportunity to serve?
Very good. And I would talk about the GEARS and the ESSER funds. A lot of them are targeted for COVID recovery or learning loss during COVID. And so, again, I'm confident you're going to use that very efficiently and effectively. And I'm glad we're part of this team.
And I think one of the things, and this is just very initial because state and national data, map testing is very recent. This is very new data, so we still haven't had complete comparisons. I think we'll see what we saw here in a similar trend, but just from conversations at the state level, it seems like other districts might have seen a bigger decline in reading versus where it was math for us. So our game plan might look a little bit different with how we use some of those dollars and how it support, because we have to follow what the data says for us.
Well, David, go ahead.
I find all this talk about data frustrating. We love to collect data. Simple fact of the matter is, as we all expected, our kids have fallen behind. And I saw on that sheet that what is happening, most of the interventions were listed for high school. The information you showed us, I think, went up to grade 8. We've got to get those kids caught up. I don't know that offering an extended summer school is necessarily the best solution to this, because summer school is voluntary. We can't make kids go to summer school. I'm very concerned in how and what we're going to actually do rather than collect data to get these kids caught back up, because education is a progression. If they get behind on math and they go into math next year, they're still going to be behind. I was very pleased to see that our graduation rate went up, but we've got to get those kids back up where they were before this all happened, and that's what I'd like to know. How are we going to do that?
Dr. Gandhi?
I think we as a district are still looking at the data and coming up with a plan. But what I can tell you initially is that I was part of the statewide committee that worked on different options of what we're going to put in place for the accelerated learning plan, which was a plan to recover learning losses. So things that we have discussed, one is looking at our intervention tools in general. So whether it's more supports for our students, and like I said, going back to the stack charts, tier 2 or tier 3, is that a bigger investment in a Read 180, Math 180, System 44, the different intervention programs we do? Another model that we have talked about and we have to take a look at, is this going to be what our students need, has been in the accelerated learning plan that's been presented to the state, has been tutoring, additional tutorial services, extended day or summer school programs as well. So there's a wide variety of things that we are looking at. There's also a social emotional learning component as well that we want to be able to embed in, because there are some students that are falling behind because they are not in the right place as well, and we have to be able to provide that support to focus on their academics as well. So I think the answer to your question is it's gonna be a wide variety of things. We are waiting for final guidance from the state in terms of what we can use. I think the current request is gonna be the new ESSER dollars coming in. We'll have 20% for that dedicated purpose of direct student support targeted towards student learning loss. I think they're gonna make us choose, I'm not sure if this is the case yet or not, or at least follow some of that guidance that the state is working on that plan. But the state is pretty much coming up with, here are different models of interventions that districts can utilize, and then we have to see if that gets approved or if that's the guidance from the state. From there, what's the best fit for Fargo Public Schools? The biggest things I think that at the high school, you did mention at the high school for us, is this new block structure for this year. So this pre-first period class that the high schools have amended their schedules to has two primary benefits. One is that it allows for more direct teacher collaboration, but the second model is what our high school principals are calling it as a prescription model. So whether it's intervention or whether it's enrichment, high school teachers are able to identify select students that need that more small group or direct one-on-one instruction and say, we need you to come prior to the first period classroom, and they get to work with the teacher in their own content area to get that caught up resources that they need and the support they need. Prior to being unable to build out this later school day, what was happening is that high schools could maybe carve out time during the school day, but if I'm RUPOC and I need help in math, I didn't have the ability to go to my own math teacher because my math teacher was teaching another period at that time, so I had to go to someone else. So we've been able to eliminate that issue by replicating the late start Wednesdays, Monday through Friday at the high schools. The other piece that I think is really important that we do as a district that we've included here is double blocking, especially with our math. Looking at our data here, we offer double block in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Are those the two?
Those are the two, and then we also offer additional interventions based on those tiers. So we do offer intervention math courses for students who might not be at the standard level yet. Dr. Gandhi mentioned Math 180, so that is one set of instructional materials we use for those interventions. But then we also offer at the middle school those same interventions, plus, and I was remiss in making that list, during our advisory time, we also use that for academic advisory as well. So that's where middle school students can also get those interventions and extensions.
Yeah. So I think the double blocking math is going to be huge because that's double the time that students can have to work with their teachers on that same ELOs, whereas another district or another school, that's a more condensed time. We probably will have higher amount of students that are identified for the double block Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 next year, but at least we have the system to create that as well. So those are going to be some of the things that we can tell you right now, but I think more that we just have to look at our data as a district and see what else are we going to do to support.
Jennifer?
Thank you for providing that additional information. And for the question, David, around the offerings that are going to be available for students, are they going to have to qualify? Or can any student that could benefit, for example, by the double blocking, participate in something like that being offered moving forward? And then I have a follow-up question.
Sorry, I'll let Dr. Gross go.
Currently, what we do is we have basically we are reviewing the data just like we talked about at any of the other data sets. And we're utilizing the classroom teachers to help us make those decisions. So we're looking at MAP data, we're looking at a state assessment data, we're looking at teacher recommendation for what might be that best next step for that student. And then our data analysis team has helped us create that protocol so that all of those teachers are helping make those decisions for our students. So we're trying to identify the right students to fit into the right interventions. And it's not always just a raw number, it's that teacher recommendation as well.
And so then, if I may, my follow-up really was around, so I can appreciate the data analysis paralysis, but I also think that targeted approaches are absolutely necessary for a variety of reasons, right? To achieve the highest possible result for whether it's one individual or more. There are a lot of different resources and programs out there. How are we deciding, for example, that Read 180 might be the best program to offer versus another reading program? Is that based on, data and utilization and things like that? Because we can take all sorts of resources, right, or the district can, and implement them all, but not all of them would probably work as efficiently as one another, right? So that's where I feel like the data is important for that reason, but then also to have a, specific plan that is implemented here that is unique to the individual needs of Fargo Public Schools.
So I hear that question, and Robin had her hand up. Robin, and then we'll have a follow-up.
I agree. I think the data is very important because you can't target the resources. So if you don't have the data, you don't know how to individualize. To your point, I think we are getting into teachers' jobs right now. This is very operational. This is not board-level work. We need to trust our educators to their judgment and those nuances and the nuances as well, but also the data. I'm not interested in learning anymore, but maybe, with respect to everybody's questions here, I would suggest if those are truly something the board wants to know, a separate report outside of this one.
May I follow up with that?
Sure.
I actually respectfully disagree with one thing that you said as far as operational, because really at the end of the day, student results and achievement is on us. And so it is important for us to understand, I think, what the district is doing without telling them how to do it. That's their job. But for us to be able to ask the question, for them to demonstrate what the plan is our job.
And that's what they just presented to
Right.
us.
So I don't think that any of the questions are too deep into any operational, in my opinion, from any of those that have asked.
I feel all questions are appropriate this evening, and that we are all learning. We have 7:15 this evening, and I am fine to be here as long as we need to be to finish our meeting. I do want to build on, and I know, Dr. Gandhi, you have your hand on the button as for a comment you'd like to make, but I do want to say that I feel like this is one of the best reports and sharing of information regarding these types of reports that we have been receiving for a number of years now. And it's different kinds of, it's the same kind of data, but shown in a different way and discussed in a different way. And I too trust that we are going to be working to put together, we meaning the universal we, not myself, administration, of course, working to put together the efforts that we can, that are at our disposal to assist all of our children. And I really appreciate the examples that you've highlighted regarding some of the subsets of our population, and having the position of Tamara involved in this discussion, helping to aid us, again, the universal us, in developing some solutions. So I would say, I just thank you very much, and trust that the work is going to continue. I would like to just ask Rupak to share, and if there's anything else, and maybe work to close up this conversation, but that doesn't mean that if there aren't other questions, they can't be sent through for more information, if that makes sense.
Sure. I'm going to ask Dr. Gross if he can disconnect. So I think, Jennifer, to your question, I can talk to you about currently, and then another conversation that we've had about where we are moving forward. Currently, we have, a wide variety of ways that we evaluate the efficacy of our programs. First and foremost is based off the input from our teachers and our curriculum facilitators and everyone else that's telling us whether the program's working or not, and ongoing research that we have on the different programs that we're implementing in our district. Secondly, the second level to that would be, as you know, we've gone through district-wide training on academic return on investments, done that with all of our department leads as well. Last year we did Read 180, Math 180. Those were two of our biggest investments in terms of intervention programs. Did a return on investment, AROI analysis on that. We learned some things about where the fidelity of implementation was strong and getting strong results, and some wasn't. Based on that, we have made adjustments into how much we're licensing for students and whatnot. So that's already an ongoing piece. Something we're not doing, but this is more of just a display thing than anything else. This is a conversation that Bob Missy, Stephen Duro, and I had earlier today, and that was, again, going back to the bell curve that Dr. Gross shared. 1 second, sorry, I couldn't connect. I will wait.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think I might just be a little tired.
Right.
So, I think I can go on, but one of the things that I will just share, okay, hold on, and this might be. Well, my computer is having issues now, so I apologize. But one of the things that we talked about doing as a district potentially down the road, or even moving forward, is just listing out all of our different assessment systems and what interventions we use for each different tier level. And as you can see, these are color-coded based on the bar graph that we showed you before where our students start. So year after year, we could take a look at, okay, for tier 1 math, we're using Math 180. Are we seeing a lesser amount of students graduating from tier 2 into tier 1? If so, then we know that program is being successful. I would caution us on reevaluating intervention programs year after year because there's a wide variety of factors that impact student achievement, but it allows us the opportunity to look at it and dive deeper if we need to. So as a district, we are committed to making sure that we're good fiduciaries of taxpayer dollars, but we have systems in place to evaluate our own intervention programs and what's working or not, and that's just one other tool that we could utilize to do that.
All right, again, if there are any other questions, please, Dr. Gandhi, I'm sure you will be willing to take some of those questions and follow up. Are we okay to move on to the legislative update? Robin and Dr. Gandhi. Robin, would you like to, are you okay with kicking it off?
Sure.
Okay.
I wrote it down because there's a lot to report on, and I will leave my federal and local report till the liaison reports if I can stay that long. GAC report, let's see, the budget forecast was presented last week from Moody's and IHS. It was a favorable to the tune of $62 million additional dollars in this budget cycle. I did send you committee hearings for videos from House Bill 1298, the transgender bill, and 2215, the bargaining timeline bill. Funding, House Bill 1388. This is the big one that we'll be watching all the way to the end. It's, if you remember, it started in the House at a 1 and 1. It was amended down to a 0 and 0. The Senate committee did introduce another amendment to reinstate the 1 and 1, but it has not yet been adopted because the committee ran out of time. So I don't know how that will play into the long-range financial plan discussion. The biggest part of my report is House Bill 1298, the transgender in sports bill. I will distribute to you the latest version of the bill. It changed midday today, and so there's been a lot of work done. I am sending you the current version plus the North Dakota High School Sports Association regulation, so you know what that looks like. This is a 5th version of the amendment. It's not even available yet on the website publicly, but it's publicly available, but not on the website. So many of those different versions have gone around today. Without wasting too much of your time, many organizations are opposing this for various reasons like equity, mental health, and economic impacts. So I'm just going to go down the list of what we built today amongst people that I work with. Clearly, my organization, Boys and Girls Clubs of the Red River Valley, opposes. North Dakota School Boards Association opposes. North Dakota Council on Educational Leaders opposes. North Dakota United opposes. North Dakota High School Sports Association opposes. North Dakota Human Rights Coalition opposes. Convention and Visitors Bureau local opposes. Our local Chamber of Commerce opposes. And then they also mentioned that the Flint Group and Super Studio signed on to oppose, as well as Microsoft today. So all of these groups are going to be sending letters to our senators. North Dakota chapter of American Academy of Pediatricians opposes, National Academy of Pediatricians opposes, and then one of our legislators is working with NDERF, that's our insurance reserve fund, and mainly, well, for many litigation purposes, but if you look, I'll quickly read through the bill because it's really quick because it's been amended down so much, but it's a new chapter of the Century Code. Athletic events exclusively for males or exclusively for females. The state, a political subdivision of the state, which is us, or an entity that receives public funding from the state, which is us, or from a political subdivision of the state may not knowingly allow an individual of the opposite sex who is under the age of 18 or who is enrolled in high school to participate on an athletic team sponsored or funded by the state, poly-sub, or entity which is exclusively for females or exclusively for males. The next two, B and C, were amended out. So for purposes of this section, sex means individual's biological sex and is based solely on an individual's reproductive biology and genetics at birth. This section may not be construed to prohibit a female from participating in a school-sponsored athletic team or event that is exclusively for males. And this was just added, an individual who is deprived of an athletic opportunity or suffers direct or indirect harm as a result of a violation of this section has a private cause of action, which is really inviting anybody, whether you're cisgender or transgender, to sue the school district. And so that is why NDERF is involved. I will say there were a couple excerpts shared with me today on the economic perspective. As you know, South Dakota did pass a similar bill. Governor Noem was, in quotes, excited to sign it first, but she is now hedging. One of the reasons is she is being deluged by NCAA athletes petitioning that the organization to take a stand against any state with an exclusionary policy. Now, NCAA and collegiate sports have been pulled out of this, but this is still how our college athletes feel. And then South Dakota was also sent communication from Amazon that they're going to pull out of their state if she signs the legislation. So as you know, we have an Amazon facility that is also being built in our town. So that's why a lot of these businesses I feel are signing on as well. So that is my report to you. Our board, this is one of those tricky things. If we ask for the board to support it, it could be changed completely by tomorrow. So I don't know how to proceed as a board, but I will individually be opposing this as an action alert, if you will.
I think what Robin and I have talked about this a little bit, and I did send an email back through to GAC members, Robin informed GAC members of the progress on this bill, and talking about, this is kind of a unique opportunity in terms of timing, and that we have a board meeting today, and we're learning about this today, this new development. It's a perfect example of how quickly things change, and I think that it even changed more than once today, is that correct?
I will tell you that one legislator whose pet project is this was passing around the wrong bill to legislators because there was a more updated version. That I don't know how I ended up with it, but I did. So that's how quickly things are changing on this bill.
So I thought about this back and forth about, is this a unique opportunity for us to actually vote on this? This is something we've talked about previously. My recommendation is that we don't. The reason for that is twofold. One, that it sets a precedent that we're potentially going to be voting on everything. Two, that if we vote on it, we have this language in front of us, and later today or tomorrow morning, it could have changed to something that we don't support. And it would not then provide us with the flexibility to do what we need to do, which I believe is to strongly oppose this bill. This bill is terrible in so many forms. And it is not only illustrated by us, but illustrated and by our school district previously. And it goes against everything that we try to do as a school district in regard to equity and inclusion. And and be a welcoming environment, an example for our students. Oh my goodness. And as Robin listed, there are so many organizations and businesses that are against this. Now, we might say, oh, because of this long list, of course it's going to fail. I don't believe that is entirely true, as we've seen in the legislature so far. So I do believe that we need to take opposition on this. I believe that certainly GAC committee can indicate opposition like you have done, Robin, in terms of whether we've opposed or supported a bill and indicated that it's the GAC committee. I would hope that the entire board would be supportive of it and have the understanding that really our entire community overall, if we're looking at the different organizations and businesses that are supporting or are opposing this, really is against this bill. And I am very comfortable with us opposing this bill in a strong manner. I told Robin I will do whatever needs to be done to be supportive of that opposition.
I would say that any further amendments are not likely, but that's usually a 2-day process that'll go through, and I forget all the numbers. The order, 6th order or 8th order for amendments, but then Thursday it will most likely be voted on. It's very unlikely for any amendments to be made from the floor. But we would be glaringly absent if we did not oppose this bill.
And is this a time where we might ask, or Robin might ask all board members to contact appropriate legislators that will be voting on this bill? That is something certainly that GAC members, I would see, are responsible for doing, but it could be expanded out to all board members as well. So just, I feel like I've said my thoughts on this. I guess if there are thoughts by other board members, I'd invite that. Jennifer.
Thank you. And I know that this is a sensitive subject and people are taking one side or the other for a variety of reasons, whether it's businesses or feeling threatened, which is really too bad because it should be about more than that, you know. But I have a couple of questions because you mentioned not being inclusive for students, and I don't see how this excludes students because those that are born male or female have an opportunity to still participate. We're not saying you can't participate. So for me, this goes back to really the idea of treating a child under 18 with hormone therapy and really feeling like it's abusive. So I have a really hard time saying that I could support opposing anything that would condone that. So I struggle for a variety of reasons with this whole conversation, but I really think that there's so much more to this conversation. And I really think that this school district has many examples of where they've supported students that are in this circumstance. And I don't know, and I'm not aware of any where this district has not. And so I think that the fact that we have boys and girls teams have been for a variety of reasons, have evolved in terms of for kiddos to all have opportunities. I don't think that we're currently limiting opportunities for students. So again, I know that you said we're not taking a vote, but I do think that it is important to say that we really need to think about this in the long term too. What is this going to mean for any student participating in any activity that is funded by Title IX or Title, I mean, are we thinking about that far ahead? What is that going to look like if there's no such thing as gender anymore? I mean, really, this is a long-term conversation, and I feel like it's come quickly, and have we really had an opportunity as a society to really think about the long-term effects here?
Robin, and I'm going to say, Dr. Gandhi, I wish Tamara were here right now. I know she provided testimony on this bill. Robin, go ahead.
I would say this bill isn't necessary. There are already regulating bodies that are handling it just fine and have been. North Dakota High School Sports Association is handling it just fine. NCAA is handling it just fine. There might be one component that some oppose and another component that others do. If you're not interested in this, I'm still going to oppose it individually. Maybe if anybody wants to contact me and say, include my name on this, that's one way to do it. But you're very, very entitled to that opinion, absolutely.
I think that, Robin, you might have hit the nail on the head here, is that there are a variety of ways to look at this and a variety of opinions that we all may have, and also that members of our community may have. But looking at it, and from the information that what I have received, is it's not a necessary bill. There are other entities that are taking care of looking at this and addressing the topic at hand. And so, for that matter, why have a bill out there? Why have a law there that's not necessary, that's covered already? Rupak.
I've been quiet because we, at the last board meeting, had a conversation about positions on legislative positions and on other bills. And we've talked about normally administration will be lockstep with the governance committees, and we're part of that, but that's also the board's position as a district. Sometimes administration may take different positions. I will tell you that as a person, individual, as Fargo Public Schools, and as representative of the administration for Fargo Public Schools, we will always oppose this bill and any bill that's exclusionary in nature for any students. And we've opposed this bill before the amendments, we'll oppose a bill afterwards. That's just not who we are as a district. We know that sometimes we have to lead by making difficult decisions, and even that are controversial in nature. So administration will be very vocal. Tamara already has been in our opposition to this bill or any future bill that we deem could be exclusionary for any students. Not to influence the board conversation, but if I want to even just go back to one thing, I would say go back and look at the one article that Tamara wrote about why we are utilizing, or why many staff members in Fargo Public Schools are starting to put pronouns in their emails. It references the Trevor Project, and just the inability for a student that might identify as transgender or to be able to see that they're part of a school system or an institution that promotes that inclusivity can prevent suicides for those students, because they're already so marginalized in so many different directions. So for me, I have no problem saying that as a representative of Fargo Public Schools, as a superintendent, and as Rupak, I will be opposing this bill, and we as a district will be, regardless of what the board's governance committee decides to do.
Yes, as I will be. Opposed it personally from the beginning, and at GAC we talked about taking a look at this bill and seeing where it was going, and now it's come to light that really we have the advice by the North Dakota School Boards Association to be opposing this bill for legal matters that could come to the school district. Now I see heads nodding, Nikki and Brian, Robin, Tracy, Seth. I'm nodding my head, and that's a consensus of this group. I understand that not everyone may agree, but I do believe that it's necessary for us to oppose this and be in step with these organizations that are at a high level within our community. Is there anything else, Robin, that you would like to discuss regarding GAC at this point?
Nope, it was intended to be a report, but thank you for your overview.
President Knudsen?
Yes.
Per your last commentary, am I supposed to note in the minutes that there is a consensus on anything in particular?
Is that okay?
Well, we didn't vote on it, I guess, but is your intention to represent it, to write an email on behalf of GAC committee? That's how I understood it?
I haven't written it yet, I don't know.
I would say that the email, I serve on GAC, Robin's on GAC, Tracy, Brian, Nikki, right?
Jim.
Jim, I'm sorry. So a majority of the GAC members are here nodding their heads. I would suggest that this memo at least comes from GAC. I'm also willing to sign on to that, or if you need me to write something additional, I will do that. David?
I'd just like to say, if this goes down as a consensus of the board, that I share Jennifer's feelings at this time.
Thank you for sharing that, David. Anne Marie, any questions?
Would it be accurate then to note in the minutes that consensus was reached that the Governmental Affairs Committee supports opposing this bill?
Or we could just say business as usual. I can continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that Robin, as chair of GAC, can continue how she's been sending out messages regarding supporting or opposing bills. I would like to visit with you, Robin, as president of the board, and consider issuing some communication as part of that committee.
I appreciate everybody's feedback. I respect it completely. Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Dr. Gandhi, do you have anything to add regarding legislative update?
Madam President, is it okay if I just start with the legislative update? Oh, actually, so I do. Robin touched on this a little bit. I was going to talk about this in my superintendent update as well, but 1388, which is the primary education funding bill, did go into committee work today. Superintendent Baser, along with others, provided some amendments, including the one-in-one addition. If you do have an opportunity, I would encourage you to go back and look at least the committee work today and some of the comments made by Senator Shively around, it seems like there's full support from the committee that's currently working on the work to promote the one-on-one. However, what they are trying to do is prepare with other legislators that don't understand why the one-on-one is needed when they're getting a narrative around ESSER funds. So the conversation around ESSER funds, a term that Senator Shively used over and over today, needs to be around effort of maintenance. And that effort of maintenance means that districts are utilizing those funds wisely. His goal is that ESSER funds are going to be used over a 3-year period. Currently, there is still that 20% requirement related directly to student services to address learning loss. But organizations need to be cautious about ongoing considerations to cost to continue utilizing the ESSER funds. It needs to be communicated to legislators that ESSER funds cannot cover salaries and benefits. They cannot cover raises. They have to be related to COVID-specific work, which would be additional work outside of what's already been done, not to supplant. So if we want to invest in our human capital through raises, the one-in-one is absolutely critical. So I think continuing that message is going to be really important moving forward. So that was probably the biggest thing, along with 1298, as we've talked about, coming out of legislative session this week.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. All right, there is no one here from the FEA, and I was not notified if anyone would be here or not be here. Anything, Dr. Gandhi, that you need to share regarding the superintendent's report?
Main thing I'll share with the superintendent's report today is just asking the board for some flexibility and some grace as it relates to COVID-19 and our FPS Smart Restart Plan. It now seems that we are, and I apologize, I'm not trying to be for using this phrase, but now it seems like there's almost a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of returning to opening things up, as even President Biden has said, and everyone else with certain goals that we have. Information and guidance is changing daily from Fargo Cass Public Health based on the amount of staff and members in our community that are getting vaccinated. We as administration are trying to keep up, and we have to go back and update all of our documents and even our restart plan. We always said our restart plan was a living document, but what had happened is at the time that we created our restart plan at the start of the school year or even this past summer, we thought things would be very kind of linear sequential. That's not the case. Now, in a given week, I might get a message from a board member that says they've talked to Brenton and he's now approving X from Fargo Cass Public Health. Or our principals might be having a conversation with Fargo Cass Public Health and they say, well, now we think you can open up for field trips or you can do this. And I'm not saying that they have, but things are just very spectacular or very sporadic to the point where we're trying to adjust to the guidance so we can do some of the things and return to a COVID-safe, normal environment for how we run schools. But some of those things might have been things that we had originally said we weren't going to do until we were in level 5. Well, level 5, what we thought then is different than what level 5 is now, because level 5 might be returning to normalcy and keeping masks, whereas we had defined level 5 as just new normal completely, which didn't include masks. So as we adjust to this, please just know that administration is going to continue to follow the guidance from Fargo Cass Public Health. We're going to work with our principals to look at what we can do that might have been restricted before. But if it goes against that, something that's in the document that's posted on the website, we're just playing catch up. And that's just asking for that grace and flexibility.
Makes sense. Should we get through the consent agenda and then do we need to take a 5-minute break? Okay. Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Approval of the consent agenda with the item that was pulled. I can't remember now. EL 14.
All right. There's been a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, we'll take a 5-minute break. It's 7:45. Okay, everyone, it's 7:50 PM. We're ready to get started again after our break. We're back into our meeting, everyone. Hello. Okay. 7:50 PM, back into our meeting. The business section of our agenda. We have three items there, A and B, and then a couple items under A. A is equitable resources and planning monitoring with the long-range facility plan, followed by the long-range financial plan. Memo 109 is the facility plan. And Dr. Gandhi, would you like to kick this off?
Sure. Every year we update our long-range facilities plan and our financial plan. We reviewed that through planning. This year we've had the opportunity to go to planning, make some changes. We discussed that with the board members at board work session as well. So that plan is here for your approval and annual update. The one significant change along with, obviously projects change, it's important to note that when Jackie creates a long-range financial plan, it's paired with the facility plan. She always looks at, for building level projects, looking at the building fund as well. That's what we try to first utilize as well. In our facility plan, the biggest difference from previous years is, and we talked about this at planning at the work session as well, is that we've always normally provided an appendix of our 10-year maintenance plan. That maintenance plan was based, I think, in 2014. We had consultants come do a facilities analysis. They recommended at the time that the district spend about $4 million a year on facility maintenance and just upkeep. We've always created a 10-year plan, but we, as a district, have only been spending about $2 million. Just trying to be cautious, but that increases deferred maintenance and often pushes things down to that 11th year. Prior to the next year's adoption for the board, we want to redo that 10-year plan, take a look at our facility needs and see what's changed as well. So for that reason, it's not included this year. But the major projects and what we want to bring forward and what we've been discussing at planning are already included in that document.
Thank you for that explanation. Is there a motion for approval?
I would like to move, but I don't have the exact wording in front of me because I don't have my laptop. So if anybody else has the exact wording in front of them.
Okay, Nikki, go ahead.
I move that we approve the updated long-range facility plan as provided.
I will second it since I couldn't make a motion, I'll second.
There we go. Nikki had the language down. So Nikki made the motion, seconded by Seth. Any discussion? Jennifer?
Rupa, can you clarify for me in the review that you just shared, what's normally included and not this time, but then you had mentioned that the district is planning to do a new 10-year updated plan, but when, I guess my question is, when is that slated for?
Sure. So it's normally as another appendix to the long-range facilities plan is a running list that our director of maintenance and our business office will work together on that has all the upcoming needs as a district. And, what projects we have and those are they're normally not just new projects, they're normally just upkeep of the current facilities that we have and different things that we need to do. Okay. So that is normally what's included. It's not included this year. That doesn't mean that the work doesn't stop because Blake and his team already have a whole level of work slated for this summer. But we want to relook at the whole thing because needs have popped up or different priorities have popped up since it was originally created and then just fine-tuned year after year.
Got it. So thank you for the clarification. I think we're talking about the maintenance updating. Okay, got you. And then if I may, unless someone else has.
Sure. Do you have another question?
Yes. So there have been, a handful of fairly significant changes, I feel like, in this facility planning and financial planning over the last, I don't even know, 6 months, 8 months, maybe even a year. And yes, we've discussed them a little bit at planning, but I don't know that everyone has had a chance to be part of that discussion or to ask questions around it. But to the point of lots of things have changed, I think one of the things that maybe I was a little surprised about, and I don't know if others feel the same, was the potential for additions to elementary schools, when not first also talking about, and whether it's pairing or not pairing the two schools that have been basically recommended to not pair. Are there other things that we need to discuss before saying, yes, we're ready to spend, an additional millions of dollars by adding on to a centrally located? And I guess what I'm getting at is, there was a task force that was referred to in terms of where to place programming throughout the city, north, central, and south. But things have changed over the last few years as well, and that's one piece of data, and they had, that data to make that recommendation based upon 2 years ago. We've learned a lot, and lots has changed, including COVID, over the last 2 years. So I'm asking, I guess, would we or should we, because when we're talking about building facility utilization, we talked about it in middle school and high school, and really making those adjustments to use our facilities. But we're really, I feel like, are we missing that conversation with our elementary buildings as well? Could there be other unique solutions that obviously first and foremost are what's best for the kids? Because it keeps going over in my mind how we know that there's some inequitable situations currently, and I get that there's not an easy solution. But shouldn't we further that conversation before adding on, I guess, really, to elementary buildings at this point?
Dr. Gandhi?
I'm not sure if other needs for our general education programming are mutually exclusive with what was determined at the task force. So the 2018-2019 school year, the task force that we had was a result of consistently rising increase in our enrollment in our early childhood special education program. And we outgrew the space that we had, which was the bottom floor of Agassiz. I believe the 2018-2019 year, we had 2 classrooms at Madison with Head Start and 2 classrooms at Centennial. The task force had recommended to have a north, central, south location. The data point hasn't changed where that program continues to grow. We have not seen a reduction in our early childhood special education enrollment. In fact, the way that program works with is a monthly child find process. We're seeing more and more students that have that need early on. So I think that the early childhood special education piece has been in, I believe, the last 2 iterations of the task force as well. We started with the north side location with Longfellow. We have then since done some work to identify maybe potential central locations, and south location is still yet to be determined. We're talking about if and when we have a future elementary school, would that be an add-on? So that's where that conversation came from.
I have a few comments. Does anyone else have questions? Okay.
If I could just clarify or add on, thank you. I guess specifically, I'm not saying that the pre-K has not continued to grow, but there are elementary buildings that are, close to maybe half utilized, right, within the district, whether it's Madison, McKinley, Longfellow. I know there's some new classrooms there now, but Washington, and what could it look like and provide future stability for those students if somehow those spaces were utilized for even the early pre-K program? Could that be, could it be a better placement to be at Madison? We've heard years ago that the configuration in that building would be great, and then that would be added students in the building for those that are already there, in a building that potentially is declining in enrollment. So without having to move that whole neighborhood, could we somehow bring a program to them for additional students? I guess is where I'm going with that versus adding on.
Dr. Gandhi?
Sure. I would say that our long-range plans are plans, and each specific component of a plan can and be subject to change. That happened last year where we had a plan where we talked about how we were going to alleviate Southside crowding. We went from a proposal from planning for boundaries to new school, back to boundaries as well. I would treat the plan as if these are big projects that we need to address, which is, location for ECSC. We have done some work looking at can spaces be renovated, what are the best options for the amount of students that we need to serve and what the task force recommendations were. That doesn't mean that the work doesn't stop. Obviously, building utilization is the best space. For this component, we need 4 classrooms. The classrooms have to have specific, they're actually a smaller restrooms and other things that modifications to classrooms are different. We learned that with the Longfellow renovation, we used some of the space that we had at Longfellow, so we wouldn't just have to add on additional spaces. We will continue to do that work, but approving the plan is taking a look at that work, because at some point we have to start somewhere, and we know that we have to plan for, as of right now, we don't know where we would actually have that space for that 4 classroom pod for a central location. Madison or McKinley don't have the ability to have that space with the programming that they already have right now. So those are all the parts of the component that we're taking a look at. That doesn't mean that by approving this, you are approving this exact specific project, because each individual project also then goes through planning for vetting, and then we work with, architects and go through the entire process that we would for any other renovation or new addition.
So this is it's a plan, it's to guide us, there's fluidity allowed, and there needs to be. A few things, or a couple of things, items that I'd like to mention that help me actually in approving this plan. Specific mention is on page 3, mentioning the core neighborhood master plan that the city of Fargo has been involved in for many months, and I've been a member of that steering committee. That was an assignment as a board member that I received. And so the work of that core neighborhood master plan has, the committee and the various neighborhoods that work has culminated now into a report. I know I've been sending you information as this work has been done throughout our community. April 6th, that report will be presented to the Fargo Planning Commission. There will be a public hearing that day, April 6th at 3 p.m. Following that, the plan is that on April 19th, City Commission meeting, that core neighborhood master plan will be presented with the hopes of final consideration and adoption. And I believe that it's important that that plan is mentioned in the long-range facility plan, because it helps to indicate to us and to remind us that we need to be in sync with some of that work, a lot of the work that's being done at the city to help us determine our future plans. So that is one area, again, and it's very, very a huge task that our community has been involved in that helps me approve this plan. A question that I have, I don't have the plan printed out in front of me, but I believe it's on page 14. Is that where the guidelines for facility decisions are listed? Am I correct on that?
Yep.
The question I have on that is, it indicates that there had been no recommendations until really recently at our last work session. We talked about the new recommendations for class size and the targets. And again, I apologize, I just don't have the language right in front of me. But what I'm wondering is if we need some language included in the facility plan to indicate that the board on March 8th reached consensus or had a discussion to support the recommendation that's now in the facility plan. Because the way I read it right now is that our community was involved in the discussions regarding these guiding principles, and then all of a sudden there's a recommendation for something different without any indication that those of us as board members had any discussion about it. So I kind of feel like that would be a link to then the recommendations, because if we are to approve this facility plan today, I believe that we are approving those new recommendations. So I just offer that up for consideration. Dr. Gandhi?
I think that's a great point. I believe the narrative at the top was probably from kind of previous years, and then at the last work session a couple weeks ago, the class size recommendation was changed on behalf of the board. I think administration, if approved, would be happy to add a line that says class size guidance and recommendations for class sizes were approved by the Board of Education, or Board of Education reached consensus at a work session on March 8th, 2021. I think that would be important.
I believe words more like reached consensus at a work session would be appropriate, and then the date of that, if that makes sense to all of you. Okay, anything else? Jennifer?
So kind of to that point, in number 3 on that same page, it talks about the preference for elementary school size to be 4 sections, and with no fewer than 2 sections per grade. Do we need to make any sort of documentation around that? I mean, it says with no fewer, but we do we do have a couple of schools that do have fewer than 2. So does something need to be changed or stated there?
What do the rest of you feel?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah, you're
Newman?
right.
Yeah, if you'd like to use your microphone, please.
Just stay in the beginning of that sentence is that it's the district's preference for that, but we may not always, because I know we have areas that have 5 classes as well, but our preference is 2 to 4. I'm
Okay.
comfortable with how it's worded.
You're saying you're okay with how it's worded. David?
Well, my feeling was from the discussion we have not decided that McKinley, and there will not be a change at McKinley and Madison. It's just, we're not ready for it right now. So it does say the preferred method is this, and we're attempting to do that. I think it will, I'm hoping it will happen in the not too distant future.
David, you're saying you're okay with the language as it is now, then?
I'm okay with it now, yes.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
And I guess that's, I mean, kind of my point is, do we need to note that we're working towards that, or we recognize that it's not there, you know, really? Because if we don't, the result is, it doesn't really get talked about, right? It doesn't really get addressed. I mean, it's been a topic of conversation for a number of years, but we haven't, you know. So I understand what all of you are saying. I'm just bringing it up really for food for thought.
The feedback that I'm getting here is that the language is okay on that one from board members, and the language that we are going to be updating has to do with the guiding principles based on class size, the recommendations that are listed in there, and adding the language about the work session. Okay, Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Sorry.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
I guess you all understand my hesitation for the record, so I'll say no.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. The long-range financial plan, Dr. Gandhi?
The accompanying document that our wonderful business manager kind of puts together. Obviously, I'm going to pull up the assumptions here, just knowing that there's been some uncertainty in the conversation about what will happen in legislative session. So know that this is also a plan. Things can change as well, but we have to create a plan to start somewhere. And Jackie, again, worked on making sure that the components are in the long-range facilities plan are incorporated here as well, and being able to use the building fund for some of those projects as well. Again, just because it made such a big, significant impact, I do want to acknowledge and thank the board for the ability to transition to bonding for the DO at the interest rate that we did. It just gave so much more capacity for some of these other facility needs that we have coming down the pipe as well, versus maybe buying down that entire building fund as well. So that is what you'll see outlined here.
Is there a motion for approval? Brian?
I'd move to approve the updated long-range financial plan as provided.
Is there a second? Tracy, did you second? Okay, any discussion? Brian? Excuse me, David?
I guess this, if it's all right, I'd like to direct this to Jackie. Jackie, I think when this was originally proposed or submitted to the planning, you talked about approximately a 4% increase in property taxes. When do we find out what that is for sure? Because our house was just reassessed and it went over 10%. You know, I think, and everything that I hear selling in town is going either at asking price or above asking price. I'm just wondering what that taxable, that increase in taxes is truly going to be.
We won't even find that out until after we've certified our budget in October for next year, is when we'll find out what the actual amount is. But previous to that, when you get that document to approve for next year's budget, it should be pretty close, because by then the county and the city will have a really good estimate of what that is.
And that wasn't meant to be critical. I just wondered when we would really know what that number was, because we're getting very close to be sitting at a negotiating table now.
This type of a question seems to come up frequently. There's conflict in terms of the time frame. Brian?
For me, working in committee, going over this and looking at Jackie, what she produced there, which is awesome, and having studied school finance for the last 25 years, since 1996, including Fargo's in every school district in the state, it's very consistent as far as what's going on here and to educate the kids. So for me, this was an easy plan to adopt and get behind. I think your estimates and things are right in line with what you know now. They all can change, though, as we know. This is just estimates, and we don't know what the legislature is going to do, and we don't know what all the other evaluations of everything's going to be. So this is a best guesstimate. So having worked with this for 25 years, I can see that you're not far off.
Any other questions? Jennifer?
Thank you. So when we look at future, I'm trying to find a page number, 11, fund balance projections. So we have in our ELs to maintain 15% or greater, or not less than, I think is how it's stated, 15%. But when I look at the projected percentages, we fall below that. So by approving this, are we essentially going against our EL?
Jackie?
I would say no. Again, these are projections. What would happen is you as a board and us as administration would have to make changes to not allow that to happen. So this is just a best guess at this time. And as someone stated earlier too, it is in at a 0 and 0 currently in this plan from the legislature. So hopefully that will change a little bit as well. But we would have to do something. This is designed to show you that under these parameters, if we don't do anything and continue as is, that we could be in a situation where we would be below those.
I see. Okay, thank you. And then I guess my last comment is, because the additions and things are in there, understanding that they can change, to me, voting yes says I'm supportive of that plan. So for that reason, I'll just indicate in advance that I can't support it.
Any other questions, discussion? Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Newman.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Benson.
No.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Holden.
Yes.
Brian Nelson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes, motion passes. Item B is EL 14. It was pulled from the consent agenda. Jennifer, that was your request. Would you like to introduce this?
Sure, thank you. So let me find the document here. I have it open. So I had received feedback asking really to reconsider the changes, and I know that we had a healthy discussion at a work session on these proposed changes, but I just thought it would be appropriate to talk about them a little bit, or give an opportunity by pulling it to anyone that wants to. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once here. Pulling the EL, okay.
Jennifer, I just want to,
There we go. Sorry.
I'm interjecting
Got it.
on purpose here for a
Yeah.
sec. What I'd like to do first is have a motion
Oh.
and a second, and then we can have some discussion on it, if that's okay. So if there, and then we'll decide how it goes. So if there's someone that would be willing to make a motion, Brian,
I move that the EL 14 be approved as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Brian, seconded by Seth. Now discussion. Jennifer?
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So as I was saying, there was healthy discussion about this at the work session. However, not here at the full board yet. So I just thought by pulling it, we could take the opportunity to really highlight why these changes were made and how we came to that solution, so that there's maybe perhaps an opportunity to clarify those that feel that this is restricting the calendar committee even further. Matter of fact, I guess I would also like to know the answer if it is indeed doing that, because I didn't initially take it like that. And so is it doing that? And is this giving some, if it is indeed the perception that this is less collaborative, can we talk about that?
My interpretation is that it is not restricting the calendar committee, that it is providing greater guidance to the calendar committee based on the discussion that we had at the work session. If there's anyone else that has questions or information to add, I would offer that. Dr. Gandhi?
At the work session, I think the conversation was around what is the function of the board, what is the function of administration, what is the function of the calendar committee. So I can absolutely see the perception that this is restricting the calendar committee, because currently there is flexibility, because that flexibility came as a result of legislative change. So when that change came about, the function of the calendar committee was never truly defined. Prior to the 2019 legislative session, or sorry, 2 years ago, yeah, the 2019, the calendar committee worked under certain parameters that were in North Dakota Century Code. Those parameters opened up. Now the board, like we had at the work session, needs to tell us, administration or the calendar committee, what are the parameters that you want to see in the school calendar? Because if not, the calendar committee would have the ability to talk about distance learning days, built-in snow days, some of those things that that was never part of their discussion before. So if your starting point is all of that is a function of the calendar committee, then yes, you're restricting what they fully can do. But if it's just they're going to continue to work under the same parameters they've had before, and the board gets to decide what they want to see components in the calendar, then it's not a further restriction. It's just a restriction from what is truly possible out there. I think that's the conversation. At the end of the day, the problem administration wants to solve, and why we asked for guidance on EL14, is we didn't want to bring a recommendation from the calendar committee and the board not approve it. So I think that was the starting point for the conversation. So again, administration's request is board tell us what is a function of the board, or tell us what is a function of the calendar committee, because we just need that guidance.
And at that work session, we talked in depth about virtual versus in-person learning, and came around to really that a focus we all agreed on, I believe, at least a consensus of us, was in a focus on in-person learning and how valuable that is, and to want to reinforce that with any changes that we might be making. Dr. Newman, and then Seth.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I received correspondence regarding this too, and I just want to make it clear for me individually as a board member, I am in no way not trying to honor the work that the calendar committee has done. I personally appreciate the collaboration of the parents and teachers and administration that I've sat on that committee, and it is a lot of work. So I don't think that we as a board were trying to come in and oversay what you are doing, or what I think we are just, as you stated very well, Dr. Garney, we're just trying to give guidance for the new parameters. So if there's a way we can communicate that better, I'd be happy to. But I received a few emails about this as well.
Seth?
And I did likewise as well. And I guess for me, I mean, Brian, you're on the calendar committee, so I would definitely, appreciate your guidance on this. And if you support approving EL14, it's easy for me to do too.
Brian?
And that's, having sit on that calendar committee, that's kind of what the members of the committee were wondering. They were kind of hesitant on what to do until the board talked about it at a board meeting. And that's what we did. We talked it at a work session and kind of came up with that consensus and guidance. And I agree with what Rupak said. You said it nice.
And others of us have served on the calendar committee. Brian, thank you for your service now. I know early on, when I was a board member, and this was maybe the first committee I was assigned to, I appreciated the parameters. Otherwise, it was, how do we make our decisions? You know, at that time, we looked at, of course, century code, but it's good to have these additional parameters. There's really, it's an inappropriate use of the individuals that serve on the committee to be involved, for us to be asking them to come to meetings and giving of their time to ultimately provide something or an option to the board that we're not going to be interested in approving. So I see it as an additional way to show that we're honoring the time that those individuals are taking to serve on that committee, and definitely thanking them for that service. Any other questions or discussion? Dr. Gandhi and Jennifer.
I'm going to lean on Doug and Jackie here, but if I remember correctly, last year, the Health Insurance Committee had also come back and asked the board for some guidance as well. And I think, you know, this is a good conversation to have when we have board committees that involve a board member, but ultimately the authority of the decision comes to the board. What we want to protect as administrators is people's time and efforts. We don't want people to put together something that the board ultimately is not going to approve. So just want to give an example that if I remember correctly, there have been another committee as well where we had to go back to the board and say the committee needs guidance, because without that, they don't know if they're moving in the right direction or not.
Jennifer.
I just want to say thank you, actually, for taking the opportunity to share that. And Rebecca, and everyone who shared that, you know, we received this correspondence and are taking the time to address that. But Rebecca, specifically around the reason why, and that there was consensus of every board member there. I think we were all there. And it all came back to really the value placed on in-person learning. And every one of us said that was something we highly valued. And for those reasons, that's why this change is here. And so, and then to Rupak's point, because if it wasn't, and a proposal was made for, you know, X amount of virtual learning days where we would have preferred in-person learning, it would have been declined. And so I think all appropriate that we had this opportunity to further offer that explanation. So thank you.
No problem, you're welcome. It looks like we're ready to vote. Anne Marie, would you please call the roll?
Paulson?
Yes.
Benson?
Yes.
Gullickson?
Yes.
Holden?
Yes.
Brian Nelson?
Yes.
Newman?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes, motion passes. I've been informed we don't need number 8, which was a possible executive session this evening. Number 9, board reports, committee liaison and correspondence reports. Nikki, would you like to start with sharing?
I don't believe we have anything new because we haven't met real recently, so we will.
Okay, Nikki, Brian? And Dr. Newman?
Not much. I attended the NDSBA Lunch and Learn last week about innovative education and thought that was really interesting. And my daughter Autumn attended her first state student cabinet meeting with Kristen Basler, and it was very cool. I sneakily eavesdropped over most of it, and I learned a lot, so.
Seth?
No, very light past couple of weeks, so I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Nothing additional, thank you.
David?
Meetings coming up, nothing to report on.
I have a meeting coming up too for the Native American Commission, but nothing additional that I need to report on. The schedule, our calendar reminders in front of you. We have homework due April 21st, so that's a little ways out there. Hopefully we all have a chance to get that taken care of. And thank you very much for your patience this evening.
Rebecca?
Yes, what am I missing?
Could I just remind board members that our Cognia visit is next week on Monday, so I hope that you have been reserving that time on Monday for board member interviews. I'm looking at Missy. They haven't received, have they received Zoom links, or when will they?
They should be in your calendar invite, and we just received them today.
Okay.
So Amy was going to go back into the calendar invite you received with the Zoom link. So just open up that calendar one. It should be at the top. It'll be right in there in the Outlook one to your school board email.
So if you have any problems with that, please reach out to Missy or myself so we can help you, but just want to make sure that one's coming up on Monday for your calendars.
Thank you for the reminder. All right, it is 8:27 PM. We're adjourned. Thank you for your patience and work.